Hey guys, this is God of Politics, and welcome back to a brand new video. But before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I will be doing another election prediction for 2024. You guys seem to like these a lot, so I'm doing another one, and this is going to be a very interesting one. I bet we'll have some heated debates in the comments over who that would actually win this election. And there's been a lot of discourse on Twitter about it, a lot of discourse online, because these are two candidates that do get a lot of attention because they're very national figures at this point. Of course, Kamala Harris, the vice president, is going to be a very national figure, but Ron Desantis has also made himself a key figure in the Republican Party as the Florida governor. He's passed a lot of laws that many people in the Trump base like, but many Trump supporters see him as a candidate that can do better in the suburbs, in areas that Trump lost a lot of voters in. So don't put much stock into these VP candidates. Roy Cooper and Kristi Noem are both possible candidates, but I'm not going to have it affect my prediction for this. I just think that, we're going to keep it to Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris because that's the main point of this prediction. But enough talking, let's get right into it. So as always, I will start off with the safe states for the Republican Party, and that includes Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Alaska, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and West Virginia, and South Carolina, and of course all of Nebraska except for the 2nd District. And that is all of the safe states for the Republican Party. I haven't included Iowa and Ohio here. I don't think Ron DeSantis would do as well as Trump in these states, but he would still win them very easily. But other than that, I don't think that there are any safe Republican states here. You can make an argument that if state like Ohio and Iowa could be safe states, but as I said before, these are still going to be solidly Republican. I just don't think that Ron DeSantis can get the same kind of rural turnout that Trump can. And even if he does do slightly better in the suburban areas like Cincinnati, areas like Cleveland, those suburban areas, he can do well. But I just don't think he's going to win it by a safe margin. But he will come close. But now the safe states for the Democrats include Washington, Oregon, California, Kamala Harris's home state, New Mexico, Hawaii, Colorado, Illinois, as well as New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine's 1st District, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and D.C. So actually, I'm going to add Virginia to that list as well. Some people may say that Virginia will get slightly closer. I just don't see that happening. It does have a lot of people moving there. They're moving in the Northern Virginia area. Those voters are shifting to the left. Many of the heaviest Republican areas are losing population, moving to the larger population centers, and those areas are becoming more Democratic. And Virginia is it's a blue state at this point. Sure, you could make the argument it could be slightly under 10 percentage points, and I might put it in it just for that scenario. But at this point, Virginia is a blue state. And by the way, if you don't know, I am using 10 percentage points plus as the safe margin here. Now, for the likely margin states, I am going to be putting Texas as a likely margin state. I do think that all of the talk about Ron DeSantis doing well in the suburbs, I guess you could maybe say it's a little bit overstated, but he will do better in the suburbs relative to Trump. Now, maybe some suburban counties still trend towards the Democrats, but that would mainly be due to population growth. I think that many voters who have shifted from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party disaffected Trump voters, many of them independents, many of them moderates. I do believe that many of them would go back for a Ron DeSantis type candidate, and that would certainly help in areas like Dallas. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you won't have those counties trending blue, but it does save you some voters here. And there's also the possibility that areas like the Rio Grande Valley continue to trend towards the Republicans. Don't count that out. And so overall, I do think that Ron DeSantis would win the state by around 5 to 6 percentage points, but that would be quite a strong performance considering the environment in Texas these days. Iowa and Ohio, I talked about them a little. They're both going to be likely Republican states as well. Maine's 2nd District, I do believe, is going to be a likely margin state. Even if Ron DeSantis doesn't get the same kind of white working class turnout in an area like Maine's 2nd District, he's still going to win it by a solid margin because then again, Kamala Harris, not a very strong candidate, not a very popular vice president. I don't think she would get as many voters as Joe Biden. I think I'd almost guarantee she wouldn't get as many voters as Joe Biden. There's a lot of people who would be open for voting for Joe Biden, but not for Kamala Harris. There's a lot of people who wouldn't vote for Donald Trump, but would vote for Ron DeSantis. When you match up the worst of those four candidates, the worst Democratic candidate versus the best Republican candidate, you do get a scenario where the Republican is going to do well despite some of the faults that they have, and that applies to Maine's 2nd congressional district here. Now, those are all the likely margin states for the Republican. Actually, I might as well add Florida at that point. It went by 3 points in 2020. Ron DeSantis will probably win by more than 5 percentage points in 2022. And I think in 2024, if he was the candidate against Kamala Harris, he would win by a likely margin, which would be truly, truly historic in a state like Florida, which hasn't gone by that large of a margin since, I believe, 1988. It went by 5 points in 2004, 3 points in 2020, but overall, this would also make history by being the first time since 1980 where Florida didn't. I guess Kamala Harris isn't an incumbent. She's part of the incumbent party, but not an incumbent herself. But Florida would probably still go Republican if Joe Biden was the candidate anyway, so that streak would be broken of it voting for the incumbents. But as for the likely margin states for the Democrats, Maine at large would be a likely Democratic state, but other than that, I don't think that there are any here. So we can get right into these lean margin states. I think that the state of North Carolina will probably be a lean margin state. North Carolina is a state that is growing in population, but there are still areas where Republicans can grow, and some of the areas that they've lost recently are areas that Ron DeSantis can maybe make up some ground in. Now, that is why I'm putting in lean margin state. I think many people understand that at this point, so not much more to say about that. I also do think that Wisconsin is a lean margin state in this scenario. You've got a lot of areas where Democrats have to lose, and that's most of Wisconsin, aside from the Wisconsin suburbs, or the Milwaukee suburbs, I should say, which Ron DeSantis wouldn't do worse than Trump in, I don't think. And Milwaukee, Democrats are pretty close to max out. Dane County, Democrats are pretty close to max out. There really aren't many areas to gain in this scenario, and for those reasons, I do think that Wisconsin is a lean margin state for the Republicans. Now into the lean margin states for the Democrats. I think that New Hampshire is a lean margin state for the Democrats. Now, this may be controversial. Some people may say it will go Republican. Some people say it will go tilt Democrat. I think it's right on the cusp of tilt and lean Democrat. It probably goes by around 2 percentage points in this scenario, which would be a greatly reduced margin over Joe Biden. But I just think that New Hampshire is a state that at the presidential level at least is still very receptive to Democratic candidates. 2016 was a scenario where Hillary Clinton did very poorly in the primary, and that translated over to the general election, whereas it didn't for Joe Biden. I think Kamala Harris would do better than Hillary Clinton, worse than Joe Biden, worse than Obama, and I do think that it would go to the Democrats, but it wouldn't be by much, and it would be a state that she would have to campaign heavily in. Now, getting into these tilt margin states, I am first going to talk about the state of Arizona, which I think is a tilt margin state in scenario. Arizona is a state where it's pretty unique, I would say. I guess you can make similarities between a state like Arizona and Georgia, but Arizona doesn't have the same kind of rural areas that Georgia has. Maricopa County makes up 70% of the state's population, and most of the Republican votes come from the suburbs, areas like Mesa, Tempe, Carefree. A lot of these areas that do have Republicans voters coming from there, and those are areas that they lost ground in 2020. Now, Ron DeSantis has a number of things he could do here. He could perform slightly better with suburban voters, and he could perform better with Latino voters. I believe he could do both of these things and win the state of Arizona, though it would not be guaranteed. I think that he would have a pretty solid chance at this. I'm also going to put Pennsylvania here as a tilt margin state, which does put him over the top here, puts him at 275 over here with Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes. Pennsylvania is a state where you've got the Philadelphia suburbs, an area where Democrats lost a lot of ground. You've got the rural areas, which I don't think Ron DeSantis would do as well in, as I said before, because you have the amount of white working class voters that really just turned out for Trump. Didn't turn out in 2018, but they turned out in 2016 and 2020. Will those voters turn out in 2022? Will they turn out in 2024 without Ron DeSantis on the ballot? Some of them won't, and that's going to hurt Ron DeSantis in Pennsylvania. But I think that the improvements in the Philadelphia suburbs will be able to give him the victory here. Now, Michigan is another state that I'm putting as a tilt margin for the Democrats. Or actually, I should say, for the Republicans, for Ron DeSantis, not the Democrats. But Michigan is a state where you've got You've got a lot of things going on here. You've got a lot of these mid-sized cities here where Democrats did gain in 2020, but you've also got a lot of rural areas that the Republicans can gain in, and of course suburban areas that kind of ties into those mid-sized cities, which I think that Ron DeSantis could perform better in those mid-sized cities, in those suburban areas, which could make up for any lost ground in those rural areas, which would make this a very, very close state, given the fact that of all these 3 states here, this is the one that Joe Biden won by the most, but it would still be a very, very close race. And I actually do think that Minnesota would probably be on the cusp of Tilton Lane. I really don't know which one to put this in. I'm probably going to put it in lean just because of the margin that we had in 2020. I think that you're not really going to have a 6-point shift in the state of Minnesota, but it will certainly be a lot closer here. Nebraska's 2nd district I am going to give to the Democrats. Nebraska's 2nd district is a district that went to Joe Biden by 6 percentage points and maybe a little bit gerrymandered, but overall it's going to stay roughly the same. And I do think that Ron DeSantis would narrowly win it. I also do think that she would win Georgia here. Georgia is a very interesting state. We've got like 100,000 people moving here a year. You've got the suburbs, which are shifting rapidly to the left. Now, I think Ron DeSantis could improve with some of those voters, but I think that the population growth we're seeing, the diversification of the state of Georgia, is just going to make it a little bit out of reach for Ron DeSantis in this election. It's majority-minority now. I mean, there's just not many factors going the way of Ron DeSantis and the Republican Party in the state of Georgia here. Now, Nevada is a very, very interesting state. I think just for this scenario, I'm going to give it to Kamala Harris, but this could really go either way. Maybe I should just leave it as a toss-up, but I think I might just give it to Kamala Harris. I think that she would perform slightly worse with Latinos. She would perform worse with suburban voters, but it is a district or a state that went to Joe Biden by just under 3 percentage points. I think that she would very, very narrowly win it, along with a couple other states here that have very narrow margins. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan are going by very narrow margins. But overall, I think that this would be the map here. 290 electoral votes for Ron DeSantis and Kristi Noem, and 248 electoral votes for Kamala Harris and Roy Cooper. Now, I know many people are going to disagree with this. This is a very far-out prediction. Many things could change. Kamala Harris's approval rating could change. Ron DeSantis could even lose himself. Now, while some of those things may not be likely, there's certainly possibilities, and that could change this prediction drastically. So, I will continue to update you guys with some of these predictions. If you like them, I'll keep making more of them. I had fun making them. I think that they're fun predictions to make. But overall, yeah, that's the video. So thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.